All right, I would now like to introduce you to your co-host for this lesson. Presenting tonight are Madeleine Para, CCL's Program Director. Madeleine, why don't you please say hello and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and hi, Ricky. So I live over here in Madison, Wisconsin, and one thing that's interesting to me is that this is going to be my 6th national conference, and I can still remember how scared I was to lobby my first year. So I'm really pleased to have all you potential lobby leads on here figuring out how to help the new people on your teams.
Awesome, great, and thanks. And tonight we also have CCL's California Coordinator, Tasha Reddy. Tasha, if you would say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, you know what, guys?
Hi, everyone. It's
Hang
great.
on. I'm sorry. I didn't start the slideshow. Hang on. Sorry about that. I would now like to introduce you to your co-host for this lesson. First up, Madeleine Para. She's CCL's Program Director. Madeleine, if you would say hello and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and hi, Ricky. So I'm calling from where I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was thinking about how this is going to be my 6th national conference. And, I can still remember how scared I was to lobby my first year. So I'm really glad that we've got this training and that there's all these people thinking about how to help it go well for the new people.
Fantastic. And next up, we also have presenting with us today is Tasha Reddy. She is CCL's California Coordinator. Tasha, if you would just say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Ricky. It's great to be on this call with all of you tonight. I'm happy to be the new California Coordinator for CCL. I've been volunteering with CCL for about 3 years now, starting with founding our Silicon Valley North chapter. Before CCL, I studied climate science at NASA for a couple of years, and I have a PhD in oceanography from Stanford.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so just to remind everyone what this lesson is designed for tonight, this lesson is really for those folks who might be called upon to lead a lobby meeting. Now, we may want to review some of the previous lessons that we have. Hang on one second, get a little feedback. There we go. So you may want to review some of the previous lessons that we have on CCU on our Citizens Climate University page. And what we have is we have a suite of webinars that are designed to help you get more comfortable with lobbying and help you get your teams more comfortable with lobbying. The first one that we have is our Congress 101, or excuse me, our Lobbying 101, and it really goes into the basics of Congress, what it's like to lobby as a citizen, what are our most valuable tools as citizen lobbyists, and then how do we leverage our most unique advantage in the fact that we are really there to build relationships with members of Congress and their staff. In 201, we talked about all the things you can do to get prepared for a meeting with a member of Congress. We talked about the research, how do you assign roles, which we'll talk about a lot more in this webinar as well, and also the importance of practice and practicing together as a team. In 301, we talked about the meeting outline. We gave a couple of demonstrations about how a meeting could go, what it would really sound like, and we talked about some really important elements of a meeting. And then in 401, we talked about really some advanced skills and how to handle some difficult situations. And again, these lessons are on our CCL community page. They're on our iTunes account. You can just search Citizens Climate Lobby under iTunes. Or even if you want to watch them, they're on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and search for Citizens Climate Lobby, and you'll find all the lessons from this series. So we've got a lot of material to cover tonight, so let's go ahead and kick things off with CCL's Program Director, Madeleine Para.
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to say is a big thank you. Leadership is so essential. We really can't function well without it, but it does take time, and sometimes being a leader is out of our comfort zone. So I can't thank you enough for being willing to put yourselves on the line to enable things to go well in our lobby meetings. And I hope you come away from all your meetings feeling satisfied, but whether you do or don't, I'm grateful for what you're putting into it. You truly are essential people, and we can't do it without you. A lot of us will feel nervous going into a meeting, and that's a normal feeling. But remember, our advantage is that we're citizens, not professional lobbyists. So although we do want you to act professional, you don't have to try to be a professional lobbyist. This is as true here as it is for our volunteers in Canada, Australia, or any other country. So just relax and be yourself. That's part of what sets CCL apart in the eyes of the congressional offices, is that we're ordinary people who care deeply about something. And let's accept up front that there will be mistakes. You'll make mistakes, or your teammates will. There will be things your team will say that could have been said better, and we'll show you how to handle some of those situations in this training. But basically, we're building relationships, so be human and embrace whatever happens.
In the short amount of time you are in an actual meeting, how you facilitate that meeting is important. But let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture for just a moment. The bigger picture is this. Meeting leaders are well positioned to nurture and empower others. Your goals to mentor or nurture the lobby team so they build their capacity for this work. How does a meeting lead help others grow and empower them? The best leaders show faith in those around them, and that's what we're asking you to do. Having faith in others means you will know there are going to be some coachable moments, fine. To feel empowered, people need to be put into situations where they can both succeed and fail. Your role is to make everyone around you better. You can do this during planning and practice, during the meeting, and after the meeting. So let's talk about advanced planning and how you can empower your team during this stage. Advanced planning is simply the time you plan in advance of a meeting. First, note one really important step. When you receive your schedule, please call the office and verify both the building and the room number. We don't want to miss a meeting by going to the wrong place. If there's been a change, be sure to let other members of your meeting team know the new location.
Coordinating a time to do advanced planning with your team will be up to you. We don't have any specific designated time for lobby teams to meet at the conference as part of our official agenda because it's just too complex given all the shifting teams and the number of meetings. So we're trusting you to figure out how to make it work and do the best you can in a short time frame. You'll get your schedules and find out if you are a lead by the Thursday before the conference, just 2 weeks from today. And if you contact people right away, you might be able to set up a time for a conference call before people head to DC. And you can also get some discussion going by email. At the conference, you can use any of the meal times on Sunday or Monday. If people arrive early on Saturday, you might be able to find a time then. We set aside some space at the hotel this year specifically for gathering with your team. It may also be possible to find a common time on lobby day on that Tuesday to meet before your meeting. But that is more risky since lobby schedules can change and it might not work out. If you can't find a time that works for everyone on the team, then set a time that works for most people and go ahead and do your planning. It might not be perfect, but it will still make a difference to your team, and you can fill in the missing person or people separately. You know, with all the bios and meeting plans sent out ahead of time, if someone can't make the planning session, they'll still have plenty of information.
So let's review some ideas for connecting and coordinating with your team. Send an email, or better yet, call to introduce yourself. If you don't know the volunteer, then spend a few minutes getting to know them. Taking the time to get to know them will help you determine what role they might fill and develops trust in each other. Ask them to choose from 2 or 3 time options for a planning meeting. Ask which roles they prefer to fill. If they're new to CCL, then it might be a good time to review and explain the importance of each role. Confirm that they received their schedule, bios, and meeting plan, if available, and ask them to review the information before the planning session.
So now that you've got the meeting set up, what should you do in that planning session? Here's some suggestions for the ideal situation, but we realize that lots of us will be scrambling to get ready, so realize that any contact ahead of time is going to be a good thing. Here's some ideas for your planning meeting. If there's a meeting plan submitted by the liaison, then review it with everyone and discuss the meeting plan strategy, or if you don't have one that was given you, create a plan. You want to review the concept of a supporting ask and when you would use it. Just as a reminder, we use supporting asks when we've been turned down on our primary ask. And if it's not already specified in the meeting plan, then help the team settle on a supporting ask. Now, as the lead, you'll want to facilitate the transitions in the meeting verbally or with body language cues. A verbal cue might sound like this. Ellie would like to tell you why we are here today and what we're asking for. A body language cue could be as simple as turning to look at them. And during the planning meeting then, you want to discuss these cues and let the team know how you plan to cue them. It's possible, of course, if you've practiced well enough that your team might not need cues at all, so you're going to need to be fluid and flexible. Another thing to consider is that there's sample meeting outlines on Community, and if you have time to review those with your team, then go for it. And then finally, during the planning meeting, you'll want to assign roles, and Tasha's going to go into this in more detail in the next slide.
So let's review the roles and what you may want to consider when assigning volunteers to meeting roles. After this section, we'll stop for questions. First, let me say that the roles are pre-assigned to ensure we do not forget to do something, but not to discourage folks from participating in the conversation. As the leader, you should encourage everyone to participate in the discussion regardless of their pre-assigned roles. Furthermore, you may or may not use all of these roles. So we'll start with the role of the asker. The volunteer assigned to this role is someone who can clearly and confidently state our one ask. For Republicans, this ask is to introduce legislation that puts a fee on carbon and returns the net proceeds back to American households. For Democrats, our ask is to support legislation that puts a fee on carbon and returns the net proceeds back to American households. Additionally, the asker should be able to demonstrate active listening and the ability to respond. For example, Representative Smith, our big goal is to get effective national legislation passed. And as you know, we would like you to use legislation that puts a fee on carbon and returns the net proceeds back to American households. Is that something you can support? If they say yes, you can say, that's terrific. Let's talk about next steps. And then you can just deliver a supporting ask. If they say no, you could say something like, could you please tell us more about what's preventing you from supporting this proposal? Or you could say, could you tell us more about what you object to in this proposal?
Another really important role is that of note taker. And it's worth our while to put an experienced person in this role. An experienced lobbyist is better able to pick up on subtleties in the conversation and more quickly identify the important themes in it. So good notes are going to cover the key points, and those help us in many ways. For example, you'll use them during the meeting debrief, and we'll talk about that later. The notes also get shared with the CCLers back in the district, and they help CCL get a more accurate picture of Congress when we do the analysis from the meetings. We suggest that the note taker take notes on a separate pad versus on the actual meeting minutes form. And after the debrief, the note taker should then do three things. First, transcribe the notes from their pad onto the carbon copy meeting minutes form. Second, type the notes into our online form. And third, turn in the bottom copy of the form at the reception. Another role in our meetings is that of timekeeper. And so you'll want to assign that. So during the introductions, the timekeeper is going to ask how much time we have for the meeting. And then additionally, the timekeeper, along with the leader, will pay attention to body language cues. So for example, if a staffer keeps looking at their watch or closing his or her notebook, you know it's time to wrap up. And then so that we can make sure to have enough time to wrap up and to do our ask and supporting ask, the timekeeper should cue the team when there's 5 minutes left in the meeting.
So we have another role called the leaver. We have this role because it's surprisingly easy to forget to leave our one-page ask behind. So we assign someone to do this. We leave only the one-page ask behind. You may choose to bring hard copies of additional resources like the faith-based statements on climate change booklet or a CCL media packet, but do not plan on leaving them. Plan only on showing them. Only leave them if they ask for them, but please do not offer to leave them anything other than our one-page ask. The role of follow-up Generally speaking, assign the follow-up to the person who is best situated to carry the relationship forward. Ideally, that will be the liaison. But it might be another constituent or someone on the team who just happened to click with a member of Congress or aide during the meeting. But normally it's the liaison who follows up with the office. The person in charge of following up should drop off the thank you card the same day. From the notes, identify and follow up on specific things the MOC or staffer said they would do. And finally, identify and follow up on specific things that we said we would do for them.
So now we're going to talk about the pre-meeting huddle. So first, ask everyone on the team to be at the meeting location 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time and meet in the hall outside the office or at a predetermined place near it for that pre-meeting huddle. And here's some things to do during it. First, go over the roles and assign them or reassign the roles as needed. Go over the goals of the meeting, review the primary ask and the supporting ask, and then remind everybody to watch or listen out for their cues. A little later on in this lesson, we'll discuss what to do if you have a constituent calling in for your meeting. The pre-meeting huddle is a good time to check in with that constituent if they're joining by phone. And then finally, we want to walk into the office early, well, like just a few minutes early, but try to wait for everyone to show up. Next, we'll talk about what the meeting leader does during the meeting. And the meeting leader is like a conductor. The leader is there to manage the meeting, not to dominate the meeting. This means the leader is not necessarily the one who talks the most, but who is in charge of the transition points of the meeting, between speakers, between roles, getting the conversation back on track, wrapping things up, cueing people, whether that's verbally or non-verbally, and especially whenever they're talking too long. So if they're present, the leader also ensures that the constituents and the liaison are heard from. And the leader should also be able to understand the meeting situation and respond accordingly. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but first let's demonstrate what we mean by transitioning between different parts of the meeting.
Before Madeleine and I demonstrate a couple of examples, there's something important to understand. Each meeting is different, so proceed in a way that's comfortable and appropriate for your situation. I'll start off by demonstrating how you might transition from the discussion to the end of the meeting close. Congressman, I see that we are nearing the end of our time with you today, so I wanted to recap and clarify our understanding of the obstacles preventing you from supporting this proposal.
Here's an example of how you might transition from showing appreciation to stating our purpose. Congressman, I want to thank you for your recent efforts to protect citizens from identity theft. That's a really important issue to me. But today we've come to discuss how we can partner with your office to create the political will for a livable world.
Perhaps it's our fourth meeting with a member of Congress or staffer. In this situation, they probably know why we're there. And if that's the case, you might choose to skip the purpose and move from appreciation into the primary ask. Here's how it might sound. Congressman, I want to thank you for your recent vote acknowledging climate change. We are here today to talk about solutions and to ask you to introduce a bill that puts a steadily rising fee on carbon and returns the net revenue back to American households. Are you ready to support such a proposal?
Another way to verbally signal a transition is to state it explicitly. An example of that might sound like this. Congressman, I want to thank you for your recent efforts to protect citizens from identity theft. That's a really important issue to me, but we're here to talk about a different topic. Tasha is going to let you know more about why we're here today and what we're seeking. So in this example, I explicitly transitioned to Tasha.
A lead also needs to be able to bring the meeting years off course. In Lobbying 401, we reviewed several examples of how to get meetings back on track. I encourage everyone to review that lesson. But we'll demonstrate one situation for you now. In this example, Madeleine will play the member of Congress or staffer who gets off topic by discussing nuclear energy. And I will play the leader who acknowledges her comment and immediately circles back to why we are there.
Nuclear has to be a part of the conversation. It must be on the table.
As a CCL volunteer, I respond, as an organization, we don't take a position on nuclear. We take a position on one thing, having the burning of fossil fuels pay their true cost to society and letting the market determine what's viable or not. The economists tell us that if we were to pass carbon fee and dividend, then the percentage of nuclear in our energy mix stays about the same as it is now. Would you like to hear more about that?
As a meeting leader, you'll do a lot of advanced planning and preparation, and that's really important. But we can't let our plans and preparations go on autopilot. We practice ahead of time, but you never know what scenarios will play out when you're there. And that's why we always need to be focused on what's being said in the moment and respond to what we're actually hearing, not what we expect or think we heard. As the meeting leader, then, you should recognize when it might be appropriate to diverge from your plan. We refer to this as situational awareness. It's the ability to perceive and understand what's happening in the moment and being able to react to challenges as they happen. Good situational awareness means you're not only listening to the words being said, but also the tone of voice and body language too. One of the benefits of having a team is that if you don't pick up on a particular cue from the MOC or staff, or one of your fellow lobbyists might, and they can then ask a follow-up question or redirect a derailed conversation.
Another situation to look out for is the silent constituent. You may choose to encourage them to speak with a verbal cue, such as, Ricky, I'd just like to pause for a moment and see if there's anything you would like to add at this point. What would you do if someone on the team says something that's flat out wrong? Rather than correcting them, try saying something like this. Okay, let me add to what Ricky was saying. Your team will appreciate you for not correcting them or pointing out that they forgot something. What would you do if a CCL volunteer gets agitated or angry during a meeting? This is not common, but it has happened. So be prepared for it and stay calm. Here's how it could play out. Madeleine will play the angry volunteer, and I will play the team leader.
Okay, so I'm the volunteer now. It's you guys in Congress who are stalling and making this worse.
As leader, I say, Congressman, obviously we're very passionate people, and we're working very hard to try and get something done in time. You were just saying that you don't think the Clean Power Plan will be effective. Could you tell us, could we tell you what we've learned about the effectiveness of carbon fee and dividend?
So the size of your teams will vary from meeting to meeting. If there's just 2 or 3 volunteers in a meeting, then each person will need to fill one or more role. But as we grow, it's more likely that you're going to lobby with a larger group of people. Large groups may mean that some folks don't have to speak. As a leader, you want to acknowledge and appreciate them for that. Having additional people in the meeting whose role is looking pleasant and affirming their interest is important. So even if they don't say anything, we should value them for being present. Also, you may run into the situation where someone informs you that they're going to be late. Coming in late will disrupt the meeting. The only time you would want to volunteer to join a meeting already in progress is if they're the only constituent. Otherwise, politely thank the person for letting you know and explain to them that coming in late will disrupt the meeting and that you'll fill them in on the meeting afterwards. The final situation to review is when a volunteer from another region or state shows up for a meeting that they're not scheduled in. So first of all, make sure they're not in the wrong place or ditching a meeting they should be in. Whether or not to include them is at your discretion. If you choose to include them in the meeting, then thank them for their interest and passion, but let them know we have plenty already and we don't want to overwhelm the office. So now we'll move on to talking about what you should do immediately following the meeting. In most situations, you're going to have time between meetings to debrief. In a lot of cases, you'll have an hour or maybe 2 before your next meeting, but that's not always the case. If someone has another meeting in 30 minutes, then let them go, but the rest of the team should quickly debrief. So a debrief is a short examination of the meeting. Here's what it could look like. First of all, get away from the office door. Don't debrief right outside the door. But, you know, they don't need to hear us. Second, the meeting leader could begin by talking about what went well and take the opportunity to nurture team members. Then ask the note taker to read the notes back. And you can look at the back of the meeting minutes form and find the section titled Important Things to Capture. And looking at that, you can both notice what you got, and then if there's something missing, discuss it and add it into the notes. As the leader, you should verify the plan for follow-up items, particularly who's going to do the follow-up, who is going to drop off the thank you card, who's going to file the meeting minutes online, and who's going to drop off the top copy at the reception. Those are all really important.
Let's take a look at the meeting minutes form. The form itself is self-explanatory, but there are two things worth mentioning. First, notice that there's an area for you to enter the meeting number. In a minute, I'll show you where the meeting number is on the schedule. So here's the cool thing. When you submit your meeting notes and include your meeting number, every person in the meeting will receive an email with the note. Keep in mind that these are confidential, not to be shared. Think of the trust that would be ruined if our meeting minutes got out there. So what we ask you to do is that you review the notes a final time, and then you can delete the email because we'll have the notes in our database.
You may get a schedule with a TBD meeting on it. TBD means the appointment is not set. It stands for to be determined. On your screen now, you can see an example schedule with a meeting marked as TBD. If the meeting is TBD, the meeting lead should contact the appointment setter, whose name and contact information are listed in the special notes section on the schedule. We don't ask that you take over for the appointment setter, but rather that you work with them to try to get the meeting scheduled. And we suggest avoiding the 2 o'clock Eastern time. The to-be-determined meetings are intentionally overfilled with volunteers because we know that when that meeting is finally scheduled, some people will have conflicts. The remaining schedule for the rest of the team is displayed in the far left column of the schedule, so you'll know whether someone can attend the TBD meeting once it's confirmed. Once the meeting is confirmed, the leader needs to inform the other teammates by phone, email, and text to let them know. Why all three, you ask? Well, first, you can't depend on having good cell service in DC. And some people don't text, and some people hate email. So do all three, and you're bound to get them in one place or the other where they'll get the message. If you're contacted by the team lead of the TBD meeting, then please respond as soon as possible.
So when you receive your schedule, you may notice a meeting with a constituent call-in. If a constituent call-in is noted on the schedule, the leader should conference the constituent into the meeting by phone. Reach out to the constituent to confirm their availability, decide with them what role they wish to play, and when you will call them. When the meeting starts, confirm with the office that it's okay for the constituent to join by phone. Call from one of our cell phones and then place the call on speaker. We shouldn't ask you to use the member of Congress's phone. If they offer it, it's okay to accept. Involve the constituent as appropriate. You may want to pause or cue them, knowing that it's hard for them to jump in by phone.
Some of you may have a faith leader on your lobby team. Unlike last year, they're being placed as just like any other new CCL volunteer. If they're new to CCL, please welcome them and include their role when the introductions happen in your lobby meeting.